Born in South Africa, raised in Manhattan, and now I live in London. I've always wanted to live there. And so, goodness, 20 years ago was my first time ever. I was flying home to South Africa, and then as soon as we came up in Piccadilly Circus, I just turned to my friend and I said, I'm going to live and work here one day. And then 10 years later, actually when I was living in Germany, flying back and forth to China, some people that I'd worked with here in New York called me and said, how about you feel about moving to London? And I was like, excellent. Interesting, because I grew up in the South African community here in New York, and that was a community that was exiled, so, and people always talk about, immigration and immigrants, and I think it's different to be, somebody who's in exile and growing up in a family and growing up in a community of people that think that they may never ever return to their home country, and their reasons for leaving are much more dire and immediate, and that kind of thing. So I'm much closer to the community, South African community I grew up with here, than I am with the South. I'm not really in touch with the South African community, except for like a few friends in the UK. I'm from the generation where my parents' generation, there used to be a law in South Africa that all blacks had to give their children English names.
Right.
And so then there was my parents were in that generation where they refused, and we just all got our foster names. And then in '76, when they had the youth riots, and the students were protesting actually about having to be taught only in Afrikaans, and apartheid and the police came and they killed a lot of children for that. So the one thing my parents made sure I also didn't know was Afrikaans. Then I couldn't grow up where I was born.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when I was 8, I arrived in New York on December 25th. It was a snowy day. I've never seen snow in my life. I'd say that South Africa is quite regional, but I wouldn't say that they're only looking out for one tribe. I mean, we have 11 official languages, which means that, we have many, many tribes with those dialects, just not just those languages, but also many other tribes as well within that diaspora. So I wouldn't say I agree with that.
What do you think about
during apartheid? The apartheid government or regime pretty much chose how many blacks would pass to take law exams, accountancy, and everything else. And it's very interesting to me that when you flip that coin and say you have to even it out, all of a sudden there's something wrong with BEE. But what about apartheid? What about the fact that even if, let's say you and I were in the same class and we took an accountancy exam, and let's say you got a higher number, sometimes it didn't matter. They would just decide, okay, I'm going to be the one who gets me an accountant, and they're going to give you a failing grade. So I think white society has a beautiful way, and when I say beautiful, I mean a beautifully fucked up way of using the same sentence multiple ways and only to favor them. The reason why I'm on this trip is because I was racially attacked in Britain, physically attacked, had to be taken, by the cops to the hospital, and no one when I was being attacked did anything for me. So the irony, I guess some people will call it that, is I needed to come home to feel safe so I can go back there. But that's when I realized that I'm more familiar here, and having to deal with that whole thing of like anything could happen, and that's interesting, right? So never was physically attacked in South Africa, was never physically attacked in New York City, and there where people are saying, oh wow, okay, this is England, they're so civilized, and that's why I've got scratches on my face and trauma to deal with. I totally support the NHS. Love it. I think it's fantastic. We need a national healthcare system, and I just honestly, it's not a perfect system, but it's also not. It's also a solid system. I mean, I can't fault it. I broke my toe, went to the emergency room in London, and the whole thing was like 16 pounds, and that was just for my medication.
Right.
You never have that here.
Yeah.
I'm explaining things to my friends in the UK that in America they charge you to take an ambulance.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to Uber to the hospital
Exactly,
than it is to actually go with a medical professional.
Yeah.
This has been absolute fun. It was a great, fun, spontaneous thing. And thanks. I'd just like to give a shout out to my New York peeps and being back in my city and just, you know, getting my feel for the flavor of my youth, and I still love New York.
What's